We out here in these Tacoma streets today.
Nice.
You know?
I'm down for that.
Absolutely. You know, we're kind of showing it right now. I'm Gregory Jones, and today we have the blessing and privilege of talking to one of the most interesting figures in Washington State's homeless response arena, and one of the most knowledgeable peers I happen to know, Mathias. Mathias,
Hey,
welcome to Take Me to Your Leader.
appreciate it.
How's it feel to be here?
Feels good, man. I'm excited.
Mike, it's been an interesting past 12 months for you,
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah.
to say the least. But you got an interesting story that I know can probably inspire a lot of people. So we want to hear a little bit about that. Thank you for coming to Lucid Living. Thank you for being willing to share a piece of yourself with all of those in our sphere.
Absolutely.
How does someone like Mathias go from living under a bridge, an overpass in North Seattle, to leading teams of volunteers into homeless camps with government funding? How does something like that happen?
I wish I could tell you. Just there's a combination of lived experience, opportunity, knowledge, and just politics, really. Just a matter of being in the right place at the right time with the right resources and the right skill set. And knowing that you can make a difference and can rewrite the narrative of all the suffering in your life by just redirecting it towards something positive.
When did you realize that you had all of this in you?
So, I was homeless for 8 months and was fortunate enough to get a notice in my P.O. box at the time that there was a program that could get me off the streets. And I diligently worked towards that as much as I could. And I had resources available to me that weren't typically available, like a car. And, that was actually really it to other people. And I was able to secure housing in Redmond because it was the only place I could afford. I started working through my community service hours that I had for a lot of the criminalization charges that I had from being homeless at the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And I realized that a lot of parents were struggling with a lot of the same things that my parents were struggling with when I was on the streets, and I was, dealing with my mental health issues at the time. And it just made me realize that, wow, like I can literally use all my suffering to help other people. I can give them the understanding that they're looking for in these books and all these, evidence-based practices that they're trying to connect with their kids, or they're trying to connect with their families and trying to understand what they're going through. And I can tell them what they're going through.
Yeah.
And so
A lot of people watching this right now, though, may be going through similar struggles, similar suffering, dealing with mental health challenges while trying to navigate their way out of homelessness or sustain a new housing situation.
Yeah.
Tell us 3 tools or tactics you used, or do you think most people can use, that help you navigate your way out of homelessness.
So the challenge with homelessness is that you're cognitively burdened by your survival. So like you're in this scarcity mindset where everything is limited. Everything is time is limited. Resources are limited. Everything that you have is limited. And so I guess the best advice that I can give is operate from abundance as much as you can. So think about what you do have, what you can do with the time that you have, aside from, trying to get your basic needs met. Like there's still time aside from that you have available to you. The other thing that I'd say is, just look for help that's consistent.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of that out there. And like I used to tell people about medications, like therapy is going to take time. You're not always going to find the right fit. And the same thing can be said about everything. Don't just give up on it.
Yeah.
If it fails you, try again. Because there are options out there. They're just really hard to access, and it takes persistence and resilience.
Mm.
Yeah.
Persistence and resilience is often a very subjective factor.
Yeah.
Is it in you?
It's in everybody that's on the streets.
Awesome.
Because that's all they have. They have to be resilient to survive. They have to be creative problem solvers to survive. You have to think on your feet to survive on the streets. I mean, there's no other way to live. So.
And what would you say to encourage someone in that position as they work to attain and sustain their own recovery?
It's hard to answer that question because for me, I had this love of learning that I discovered in my homelessness. And I worked my way through it with this dopamine boost that I was receiving from learning my way out of it.
Amazing.
I didn't figure it out because of the help that I had. There's no help there. All the help is at capacity. All the help is grad students just getting out of grad school, just trying to earn their licensure hours enough to get into private practice and escape helping you. So I wish I had this optimistic messaging to provide people, but when it's all said and done, it's up to the social service sector to meet you all the way, not meet you halfway. And until that happens, I don't know how I would have gotten out of it if it wasn't for that. I mean, just being realistic.
So to a certain degree, you had to take a significant level of accountability even when things seemed to be dark, even when there was an aspect of despair.
There was no escaping that despair. Like if it wasn't for my vehicle and if it wasn't for my love of learning, I don't know what I would have done. I would have still been on the streets. There's just the honest truth is, unless you have this persistent drive to learn what resources are out there and you have this systems perspective that luckily I was somehow given and discovered on the streets. I just don't know how you would dedicate the time and continue to be mistreated and forgotten by the system to escape it. It would be next to impossible with the level of impairment that you struggle with on the streets. That's why it's necessary for people that have escaped homelessness to really advocate for change on the other side of that spectrum, on the provider side, because it's not working.
And we're definitely about to get into a lot of the change that you've advocated for, which has been quite attractive, to say the least. And don't forget to like this video, people. We're going to take a moment to remind you, like the video, leave comments, subscribe to the channel, because as you see, what we're doing over here is helping to equip people with the tools they need to thrive and survive in society. So thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that like button. Now, with that in mind, let's talk about some of the work you did last year at Bitter Lake.
Okay.
Mike, they quoted you in the Seattle Times stating, to set me up to the degree of which there would be this expectation that I would be this put together formal leader in this space is not what I was ever trying to do. I was trying to build a parallel structure. I was trying to do something different. Mathias, what exactly were you trying to do out there at Bitter Lake?
So kind of like what I was already saying, one of the biggest barriers to an effective homeless response system is, one, being at capacity, two, having limited resources, three, having outcome stagnation as a result of those resources. On the other side of the coin, like I had mentioned earlier, people are severely limited in what they can do when they're out on the streets. You have cognitive impairment in the form of trauma, addiction, mental health, and physical health issues. You have people stealing from you all the time. You have no safety, no security, not even a place to just simply sit down and exist. You don't have anything that you and I take for granted every day.
Yeah.
And so when you have that disparity on both sides of this equation, you get what I call bidirectional scarcity. And you're never going to be able to connect those two sides of the equation if you're both experiencing scarcity. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to figure out a way to resolve that. And we wanted to innovate and collaborate in between these siloed operations where each service provider is limited in their ability to do anything about the scarcity. So we created the model supportive outreach, and supportive outreach was designed to lower both the caseloads on the provider side and raise the cognition and availability of the camper side. And by the way, that was my phrase. I coined camper. That was my thing.
Nice.
Have you ever heard it? It's me.
Right, with thighs. If you ever hear it.
But
you know where it came from.
Yeah. But the whole goal was to provide on-site support in the middle of an encampment by people with lived experience of homelessness. So you have that connection point. We stressed an equal power dynamic amongst the campers. We weren't there to save anybody. We were there to train everybody to do this for themselves, but also to do it for other people. And so we were inviting people back that we were housing to help us as volunteers. We were an all-volunteer organization to keep things in the right direction. We felt like city funding would kind of navigate us in a direction that we see unilaterally throughout the sector. And we also went and asked people what they needed. We didn't ask them to take what we were offering. We never just suggested what they needed. But I'll scoot back a little bit and go over kind of what happened. Meeting people all the way by being on site in the middle of encampments. And we wanted to also do needs-based assessments and understand what the true needs of that area were, and then invite providers to come on site and collaborate based on those individual needs. And the goal of that was to have providers share resources and have targeted referrals being made instead of allocating all their resources to broadly hit up all encampments, hoping that somebody needs a service, and being met with cold, transfers and distrust. We were there on site. We were creating relationships. We were building those. We were gathering trust. And that way, when we introduced providers to them, they were more likely to accept care. So the goal was to balance those disparities so things were connecting.
When I came out there to visit y'all, visited the tent, saw the system you had in place, it was obvious that the equal power dynamic was there and that you guys are making a lot of progress. How many people did you and that team of volunteers eventually get housed?
At least 70. The amount of people that we got in through transitional housing was about 68. I think that was it was 48. I don't know, it's been a little bit. But it was like 48 people got into the transitional housing. Yeah, that's right. 48 people got into the transitional housing at the very end of the encampment. 20 people got housed in transitional housing options with the help of the city, as we were their targeted outreach provider for that site. So we were making individualized referrals for a period of time that we got 20 people in. And then we got about 14 people into permanent housing through housing subsidies in that time. We also got everybody there at the camp, over 100 people IDs, enrolled in food stamps. We got them onto Medicaid, so they were insured. And we were working on getting them cash assistance through a government benefit program called Age Blind and Disabled. But all of these programs had their own barriers, and so we were only able to do so much with the limited 5-person all-volunteer staff that we had.
And the progress that you made was extremely notable, Mike.
Yeah.
And I want to take a moment to commend you for your fortitude, your resilience, your vision, and your altruism.
I appreciate that, man.
And I say we take a toast to it.
All right, cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is brought to you by the Lucid Living Transitional Care Network and Topo Chico.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to go ahead and pop these open, man.
Awesome.
And make a toast to all of that wonderful work that was done out there at Bitter Lake.
I appreciate that.
Much respect to the beautiful state of Hawaii as well.
Nice. That's awesome.
Absolutely, man. It's a blessing to celebrate with you.
Yeah, no, you've been through it to the end.
Hey, man, I'm just very grateful to be able to witness this moment in history. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Oh, that's awesome.
How beautiful, right? Man, shout out to all the people at Topo Chico. We love you.
You make a good drink.
Yeah, especially with this grapefruit twist.
Ooh. Fire.
Wonderful twist to my day. You know, Mike, despite all of that beautiful shit that transpired out there at Bitter Lake, it wasn't long before those wonderful outcomes got overshadowed by some controversial situations and accusations. I'm genuinely curious to know, what's your side of the story?
Money is a bad thing. Money is an idea, and it's a bad one. That's what I always say. We were very successful and making a lot of positive change there at Bitter Lake. We were garnishing like international attention. And the challenge when you're an all-volunteer organization receiving large amounts of donations is you start getting scrutinized.
Yeah.
And the first thing that we did when our donations started increasing was hire a paid staff member because we were overwhelmed. We were out there for 5 or 6 months at that point, and we were working 12-hour days, 7 days a week on the site, in the encampment. And it was just exhausting. Yeah. And we were at, Topo Chico. We were at each other's throats. Like, you know, it was very, very burnt out atmosphere. You know, you're dealing with 60, 70 people at once, all in crisis, all in health disparities. Like, it was exhausting. So, when we hired a paid staff member, it was to the dismay of one of our volunteers, who was interested in receiving that role. Her unemployment had run out. She wanted to continue doing the work, but she had a mortgage. She knew that she needed to go back to a paid role, and we didn't hire her. We knew that we wanted to create a culture of, you know, mental health balance, not burnout.
For sure.
There's too much of that out there. And so it wasn't anything personal, but that was taken very personally. And I know now that there's this dynamic that occurs when you're working with people experiencing homelessness. And that is one of crisis. You know, you're always in this crisis moment, and there's always something to get done. And the light at the end of the tunnel looks so close, but it's infinite. It's infinite. And it becomes this like hurricane that you're in the middle of the eye of the storm, where it's calm and it seems in control, and you're leaving disaster everywhere you go in your wake. And it's hard to see that from the center of the storm.
Yeah,
you know? And so I think what happened was, from my understanding, this individual felt that if she could somehow remove me from my role, that she could convince the board that she should be in my role. And that didn't happen, but that was definitely the intent of her actions. However, they were based in truth in some degree. Back in July, in our early moments, I did have a moment of weakness in my recovery. I'm a formerly homeless drug addict. I have my own challenges, and I succumbed to one of those temptations back in July with an individual that I was giving a ride to an appointment, who offered to intravenously inject methamphetamine into me. And when it's staring right at you, it's kind of hard to say no to.
Yeah.
And luckily, and this isn't, justifiable, but luckily, she wasn't able to successfully administer that shot. But I consider it a relapse all the less. And I confided in that volunteer at that time about that mistake. And she was also in recovery, so we were very supportive of each other the entire time that we were out there. And so that was a secret that I had kept in confidence with her. And that was definitely a red flag that I ignored in July that I should have addressed more seriously at the time. And I regret not doing that, because that's ultimately what caused a lot of the disparities between reality and malicious activity.
Yeah, and the residual drama
Yeah.
that came to follow. The media got legitimately involved
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point.
I listened to a couple different podcasts and news stations about the coverage around Bitter Lake, but I was honestly just so consumed by the work that I didn't have time to sleep. I didn't have time to eat. I didn't have time to go home. I was there unshowered a lot of the time. I was just pulled into that hurricane, crisis after crisis after crisis, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And so a lot of that coverage I didn't see.
How did all of this, when it culminated, make you feel? How did it affect you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, when everything came to a head, Mike?
Oh, I was devastated. When the Seattle Times article had come out, I had already stepped down from the organization, and I had stepped down from the organization specifically because the King County Regional Homeless Authority was alerted by the volunteer in question about all of these accusations that were completely untrue, based on the one nugget of information she knew to be true. And it was very surreal. I did have a full relapse shortly after that. I feel like anyone would at that point. I was getting assaulted. I have a scar here now on my face from somebody who attacked me.
Is this at the camp?
No, this was just in public after I don't even know who that person was.
Just randomly got attacked.
There were people throwing garbage at me in public. There were just all kinds of, I had to shut down all my social media accounts like immediately. All the Anything Helps, the website, everything. It was just so overwhelming how negative everybody had become. Yeah, I mean, in the cusp of my addiction again, I just saw no reason to go on. I didn't see any point. I founded a company. It's moved on without me. I sacrificed my reputation with it, and allowed it to continue on. And I felt like I was kind of riding off into the sunset anyway. So I tried to kill myself. I literally bought some fentanyl, something I don't do. Never been an addict when it comes to opioids, but I know that they're good for one thing. And so I I purchased some from someone, and if it wasn't for a wellness check that was called in by my neighbor, I wouldn't be here. Like,
how far did you go when you got that fentanyl?
They had to revive me with Narcan. I was dead.
So you were gone for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody, a concerned citizen who knew you, made a call to make sure that you were okay.
Yeah, I called my parents, said goodbye, gave away all my belongings. The organization had given me some money to attempt to fight the allegations, and I gave that all away. I was just done. It seemed like the most logical thing to do.
What was going through your head when you decided to take that step of ending your life? What made you make that decision at that time?
Seeking relief from the pain, seeking relief from the humiliation, seeking relief from just all the responsibility and all of the just work that was ahead of me to clear my name. It just seemed insurmountable, and I had just realized at the time that my romantic relationship that I had started to develop after Bitter Lake ended up being she ended up being really unfaithful and not very honest about who she was, and that was kind of the last straw for me. I was just like, I don't see why I would continue down this road. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And hindsight's 20/20, right?
Absolutely.
So thinking about the future work you have in store for yourself, on this marvelous comeback I'm looking forward to witnessing, what will your future boundaries consist of when you return to engaging with the vulnerable yet risky population you obviously feel called to serve?
Well, I've developed a support framework for myself. I've got 90 days sobriety as of like 2 days ago. And I've been creating a recovery infrastructure for myself, through my church, through my NA home group, shout out Hope Fiends, and just through a men's group, through all kinds of different groups that I'm trying to become an active member of, because I do see the value in social networks. I see the value in social structures that are healthy, that are working to better each other's lives. So I've been really invested in that. I'll always keep my left foot in those systems. My right foot is never going to be able to go as far as it did. I'm never going to be able to take on a burden as large as Bitter Lake. But the benefit in that is that I'm going to have people meet me halfway. And that's a positive thing, because that's what this sector needs, is collaboration. So as of right now, I'm just working on it as a volunteer of my own accord, no organizational affiliation, just doing what I know is right, housing people, working with people, but I am doing it with support. So I'm really easing my way into it. I started probably about a week ago, getting back into it. And we're working with, I'm working indirectly with the clients that we were working at in Bitter Lake to try to help them with their housing navigation, because that's where my benefit lies, is the knowledge of housing navigation. I'm working directly with the case managers at the tiny homes and at the hotels, so they can actively, direct the clients that we had. So that's kind of what we're working on right now.
As someone who has witnessed you thrive and evolve in the realm of peer support, I look forward to witnessing more of the magic that you have in store for everyone in our community. And today I celebrate your recovery, Mike.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you too, man. I appreciate
Give me a hug,
it.
bro.
Yeah, of course.